artist because especially since we're doing like collage and um clay. I do have clay books on artists that do clay. But this one, when I do this in class, the students love it. And I think this is a good opportunity if you don't have like a lot of collage stuff like glue or tape. You do not need glue. I like Mod Podge, but that's not an early childhood thing. That's an Anna thing. This guy, Alexander Calder, used wire, and so did another one I put as a sample. I think her name is Louise. I don't ever remember how to say her last name. So Alexander Calder, actually a student did this one, and that's how I learned about it. And then I bought this book, and we usually use pipe cleaners, and I have photos to share with you that you probably think are hilarious. The students, of course, end up making jewelry or crowns, but Sandy Alexander Calder did something a little different. So I know many of you are working on your artist. I think one of you hasn't gotten an artist approved as of yet, and you need to do that. Um, and I know I sent two books in to Alana that I had of the artists that were chosen. Um, One of you also found one of the books recorded online. That's not the most ideal way, but it's a perfect way to do it if you can't get the other ones. I don't want you to have to spend money. So this is Sandy's Circus, and it's by Tanya Lee Stone, and it's illustrated by Boris Kulikov. Okay, and inside this, it shows like the tools that he's going to probably use for his process. I'm predicting that. And I might definitely ask students what they think this book is going to be about based on the prediction. I might be able to be like Sandy's Circus. Has anybody here been to a circus? And I think nowadays circuses are really less, well, one, they're not really in vogue, right? Because it's mean to put animals in cages, but also I just think there's not as many opportunities for people to go to circuses. So, Sandy's Circus, a story about Alexander Calder. And this is Alexander Calder here. All right. See, these little animal shapes, circus shapes, are made from wire. I think it's okay to do the pipe cleaners because wire probably could get a little sharp and is hard to cut. And pipe cleaners, I found students are able to create, I mean, they are older adult students, but they're able to create quite a few things with them. There once was an artist named Alexander Calder, only he didn't call himself Alexander, and he didn't call the things he made art. Everyone called him Sandy. He had been making his objects since he was a kid. Sandy's mother was a painter. His father was a sculptor. Even though they moved from Pennsylvania to Arizona to California to New York and back to California, his parents always made sure Sandy had a workshop and tools. So they don't call it a studio per se, they call it a workshop. But he has artists um for both sides, for his mom and his father. We see him here, he's already playing with wire, very Montessorian. Let's see, he made his friends toys and jewelry from scraps of wood, leather, and wire he would pick off the street. So he's also using found items, some sort of like Basquiat, and maybe some of the artists we'll learn about next week when you guys post your presentations. Sandy built his sister Peggy a castle for her doll, complete with a moat. He and Peggy made toy animals and played circus in the workshop. Even though Sandy loved creating things, he didn't always want to be an artist. He went to college and learned more about making things by studying to be an engineer. Sandy had different jobs, but never really liked any of them. And then he worked as a fireman in the boiler room of a ship. And one night he was sleeping up on deck, sailing between San Francisco and New York. When he woke, he was awestruck. On one side of the ship was a fiery red sunrise, and on the other, the full moon shone like a silver coin. The sight made Sandy want to go to art school, and he did. Artists need to work. The newspaper hired Sandy to draw the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. For 2 weeks, day and night, he went to the stadium drawing as many different parts of the circus as he could. He loved sketching the elephants, the flying trapeze, the lion tamer, and the dancers. Sandy sat in different parts of the theater to see from up high, down low, off to the side. So he's kind of talking about perspective. The next year, 1926, he decided to go to Paris. I think if I was teaching Alexander Calder, I would have to have them have a map. Why Paris? Because this man traveled a lot in his world, right? Because that city was alive with art. And Sandy said in Paris, it's a compliment to be called crazy. Sandy rode through the streets of Paris on his orange bicycle. He carried a roll of wire around his shoulder and a pair of pliers in his pocket. Just as a little dog that's following along behind him. When Sandy bumped into a friend, out came the wire and pliers. He would twist and bend and curl while he chatted, and before he said adieu, Sandy would give his friend a gift. Voila! A small portrait of the person made of wire. One day, Sandy made a little wire lion and he built a colorful cage for the lion. Of course, since the lion was a wild animal, it needed a tamer. So Sandy made him too. And then he made high wire walkers and a high wire for them to walk on, and a safety net in case they should fall, and a flying trapeze and a red stage. And Sandy started to see a whole circus come to life before his eyes. What's really fabulous about this is he's creating these items, not buying like action figures, which is a lot of what I did with my own kids, but also a lot of what our children do. And when they get an exact replica of an action figure, that takes away from the imagination. And here, Sandy's kind of creating this world. Then he really got going. His huge hands worked with tiny pieces of wire, cork, cloth, buttons, yarn, string, leather, paper, and bits of wood. He twisted and shaped and curled and cut and curved until Sandy was ready to put on a big top circus show. His circus filled two suitcases. Click, click. Sandy set up the stage with his animals and performers wherever and whenever he could. He went back and forth from Paris to New York, those suitcases always along for the ride. During one stay in New York, Sandy made more animals and acrobats. His circus grew to fill 5 suitcases. And when it was showtime, out came the suitcases. Click, 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 kind of like a puppet show. A friend wound up the gramophone to start the music, and Sandy boomed a greeting to his audience in the voice of his wire rig master. Monsieur Loyal, announcing the performance, was about to begin. On his knees, this bear of a man worked the springs and strings and levers of his clever creations, making them leap, run, and dance. Hear the whistle blow, horns blare, see the flying flippalinos. Flip! The lion roars, the lion tamer tames, seals bark, tossing a ball from nose to nose. Rigolot, the strong man, bends to his toes and raises a huge barbell high above his head, showing off his beloved bearded lady. Horses gallop, birds flutter, dogs dance on whirly-twirly legs. Pativo, the clown, plays tricks on his fellow performers. He dangerously distracts the axe thrower just as he hurls his axe at the wire girl. Oh no! Injury under the big top. But never fear, help is on the way. Sirens wail, 2 wire rescue workers race in to carry the girl off on a teeny tiny stretcher. Sometimes the show went on for hours. There were chariot races and bucking broncos, a belly dancer, camel, and kangaroo. Sandy crawled around on his hands and knees, arranging his wire animals and circus folk, setting them in motion to perform for the crowd. After the grand finale, he brought them all back for a bow, not a bow. Encore, encore! The crowd laughed and cheered for more. Word spread throughout Paris and New York. Everyone wanted to see Sandy's circus. They loved how full of joy and fun it was. They loved how Sandy's work was always in motion. People said he has discovered in playing a new world. His art has the force of the ocean. Sandy delighted in crafting things that moved. He made new kinds of art, hanging his shapes up, connecting pieces to each other with wire, and letting the air drift and spin them into motion. In doing so, he turned ordinary objects into extraordinary art and invented the very first mobiles, which I never knew until last semester. And it all started with Sandy's magical, movable circus. How cool is that? So your class can make a mobile with their objects. And then there's a great author's note at the end. Um, it says Alexander Calder was one of the most important American artists of the 20th century, and his circus was one of his most important works. I remember the first time Alexander Calder's work outside of I saw his work outside of a museum. My soon-to-be husband and I were enjoying a lazy Sunday drive in Connecticut. As if by magic, in the midst of cows and serene country roads, a large yard appeared, filled with bright, bold sculptures. The line, color, and joyousness of these structures were unmistakable to me. Stop the car! So he's known for the circus got him going, but the mobiles are one of his very probably biggest or what he's most famous for, I would say. What a way to capture children's curiosity, right? So I want to just show you some of the things students created. All right, so here we have, and of course they adorned me in them. We have a crown and rings, bracelets, eyeglasses. I think there's a necklace on here. And they just had a great time. I will say a lot of the time it always became jewelry, and I don't know why. And um, there were butterflies, it looks like. But a lot of times I might go in next semester and had this idea of like, okay, maybe not a circus. What else could we do if not a circus? Because circuses are kind of not so cool. I mean, we could do something like the dairy parade or something, or like, you know how they have the animals at the fair, something more local. And I think that's a really cool thing too, if children have maybe gotten to do those experiences with their parents, or, you know, make a farm or something that is something that children will have had experience with that is more relatable for them. Or even a dollhouse, maybe some kind of house. I like how that he had made his sister a castle. There's lots of ways to do it. So I love this, and I think if I was teaching in an early childhood classroom, I would have to do something with Alexander Calder and let children like create a wire world kind of out of pipe cleaners and maybe even boxes and all sorts of things, and then let them keep revisiting it and bringing it out. I feel like Paley would have a field day with the stories that the children might dictate using um, these creations. So thank you.